Hi, today I'm going to show you how I quickly make one of my favourite venison dishes, a staple that I have nearly every week. It's venison chili. So I've got some pre-prepared minced muntjac, some frozen peas, some tomatoes here, could easily use a tin of chopped tomatoes, half an onion that I've got left over from a meal yesterday, some mixed herbs, chives, smoked paprika and some chilli flakes. Then I've got an oxo cube too, which I like to add just to make it a little bit more beefy. And then nothing to be ashamed of, I've got a packet mix of for chili con carne. I'm going to start off using this little mixer. You've seen me use this before if you've watched the video I did on making venison pate, venison liver pate. And I'm simply putting as many of these tomatoes as will fit. That's all of them into the mincer. Do have to hold the lid down because obviously there's a lot of fluid comes out. We don't want it to leak everywhere. And simply chop the tomatoes. I'm going to heat some oil in this saucepan and a little bit of butter. Butter's mainly for the flavour. The oil allows me to get the pan quite hot. You can add more butter and more oil later if need be. While that's just heating up, very roughly chopping the onion. Don't have to be precise with that. We'll add that shortly. Now I'm going to put the venison mince in. This is mince from the shoulder and the flanks, the genuine trim from the carcass. If we use better quality meat, if we use haunch or even saddle meat, there'd be no fat whatsoever in it. There's already little enough fat in venison mince. And if it's too lean, it makes it difficult to cook and it takes a little bit of the flavour away. Just keep that moving until it starts to brown so that none of it sticks to the pan. Ideally I could do with a slightly larger saucepan, but I haven't got a medium sized one, I've only got this one, or a much bigger one. The meat's fairly evenly browned there, only took a couple of minutes. Just add in another chunk of butter. Add in the chopped tomato. Again, like I said before, that could easily have come out of a can. Just so happens that I've got a couple of tomato plants that have got an overabundance of tomatoes at the moment. What I'm doing with those is, as soon as they're ripe, I'm chopping them, putting them in a little bag and freezing them. Just so happened that those ones were fresh. Stirring in the tomatoes. Add in the chopped onions at this point too. You notice I'm not really measuring anything. The mince was packed in 450 gram packs before I froze it. I use those plastic tubs that you can buy from the supermarket, or occasionally I'll use plastic bags or even my small domestic vacuum packer. One thing to remember with venison mince, it's a really useful idea to pack it flat or in thin layers so that it defrosts quite quickly. I'm going to add my frozen peas too. Sweet corn's good as well. Just adds a little bit of vegetable and a bit of colour as well. The tomatoes add enough moisture. We're unlikely to need to add any moisture, but we could add water or even some red wine or or port. Now I'm crumbling in that OXO cube, and that to me is the nearest thing I've got to a secret ingredient for my chilli. Like I said before, I just think it adds a little bit of beefiness to it, a bit more flavour. Now I'm mixing the proprietary chilli mix. You can get these at different strengths, some are hot, some are mild. This is a pretty middle of the road basic one from the supermarket. Mix it through as we go. Just going to turn the heat down a little bit now we've got more ingredients in the pan. Some mixed herbs, paprika, and a little bit of extra chilli. Don't go crazy with that. Got some chives there, I'm not going to add them until the end. Now we just stir it through, let it cook for maybe 8-10 minutes, it'll be good to go. We're nearly there now, it smells lovely. Obviously for a classic chilli we'd add some red kidney beans from a can probably, but I simply don't have any, so it'll be what it'll be. I'm cooking up some pasta to go with this, but you could just as easily put it in a tortilla wrap to make a nice burrito, or use it as the base for a shepherd's pie. I generally cook a little bit more than I need for the meals that I'm planning, and I'll put it back in the container that I use. Obviously I'll wash the small plastic container and put it back in with some pasta, let it go cold, and then I can freeze it to be reheated on another day. Whilst that pasta's cooking, I'm just roughly chopping up using the scissors some sliced mozzarella, and I'm just going to put that over the top when it's all finished. If I was putting it in a burrito, I'd put more cheese and really make that part of the recipe rather than just as a condiment on top. Just added a little drop of boiling water just to make it a little bit more moist. That's perfect now. We're going to add some balsamic glaze. Not too much, just adds a little bit of flavour. Stir that through. Lovely. I'll drain the pasta and it's ready to serve. So there we have muntjac minced venison chilli with pasta and some mozzarella on top. I'm really keen to promote the use of minced venison and the cheaper cuts like diced venison, shoulder too. It's really important that we use all of the carcass and make the best of what we've got. Thank you very much for joining me.